Welcome to the presentation of impact of government foreign debt on gross domestic product of Sri Lanka. To conduct this research, we have obtained annual time series data from the annual report of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for the period from 1950 to 2017. We have two variables with those variables shown positive trend and variables move together with the same pattern, hence variables are co-integrated. Accordingly, there are 68 data points with annual time series data for two variables, GDP gross domestic product and GED or GFD government foreign debt, government external debt. We use government external debt or government foreign debt as our main variable. That variable is highly affected with the changes of exchange rate of Sri Lanka. During this time period, the exchange rate depreciated from 4 rupees and 77 cents to 152 rupees and 46 cents to purchase a US dollar during this period. We use augmented decoupled test to check the stationarity of these variables. Original variables are non-stationary even after differencing, but log transform variables shown stationarity at first difference. After we identified variables are stationary at first difference, we use Johansson co-integration test to identify number of co-integration relationship. Accordingly, Johansson co-integration test identified there are two co-integration relationship based on trace. Based on the results of Johansson test, we use error correction model to identify the relationships to make prediction. This is the error correction output. You can see in this error correction output, co-integration equation is significant in the model. It is negative as expected and 8.8% of the long run disequilibrium is corrected with the model. Only first difference of the log of government foreign debt is not significant. Even that we cannot drop the variable since there are only one independent variables in the model. R squared value is around 52% and adjusted R squared is 49%. In this model, we have identified there is a positive relationship between first difference of log of GDP and first difference of log of government external debt. After we develop the model, we want to validate the model by using residuals are normally distributed, residuals are homoscedastic and residuals are stationary at level. Then we use dot plots to identify the behavior of residuals. It is given there is a rough idea the residual values are in accordance with the assumptions. In addition to that, we use box plot, QQ plot and histogram to identify normality, and also we use skewness courtesies with Jerkibera test. Coefficient of skewness is 0.15, courtesy is 3.03 and Jerkibera test coefficient is 0.25. Their p-values are 0.62, 0.96 and 0.89 respectively. Then we use Weck residual serial correlation LM test. For first leg, its p-value 0.17. For second leg 2, it's 0.99. We use joint test to check heteroscedasticity. Its p-value become 0.38. Accordingly, the model satisfies all its assumptions. Then we use two types of forecasting techniques to predict future values. One is static forecasting, that is use actual values of lag dependent variable. With the dynamic forecasting method, we use forecasted values for lag dependent variable. Hence, we can use static forecasting for one step or two step ahead forecasters, but dynamic forecasting techniques we can use any number of periods ahead forecasters. Then we can compare actual values with static and dynamic forecasted values as follows. Accordingly, these figures you can identify, we can obtain closer forecasted values for GDP in the country by using both forecasting methods. Then we consider graphical presentation of the actual and static forecasting values. You can observe values are coincided approximately. After that, we can use dynamic forecasted values with actual values. You can observe dynamic forecasted values also even a closer values to actual values. Hence, we can use static forecasted values for short term forecasting purposes, and for long term forecasting purposes we can use dynamic forecasted values. Then we consider about the recommendation. It is mentioned that foreign debt liability should be maintained at a sustainable level. That means any government in the world would like to maintain the foreign debt liability at a sustainable low level, since it will expand with the depreciation of external value of Sri Lankan rupees. In Sri Lanka, with the depreciation of external value of the Sri Lankan rupee, the value of external debt is expanding. In this research, we have identified that there is a positive relationship between government foreign debt and gross domestic product of Sri Lanka. Hence, it is mentioned, however, it should be more careful when reduce the government external debt, since this study is identified that there is a positive relationship between government external debt and GDP of Sri Lanka. If so, economic policy decision makers should be more concerned about this kind of relationship before making decisions to reduce external government debt in Sri Lanka. Without considering this kind of relationships, can be result unfavorable effects on GDP of the country. Anyway, there may be so many different models to predict GDP of the country. Policymakers should be compare those models with the goodness of those models. This is the end of my presentation. I would like to thanks all the participants for the participation of the presentation with the global pandemic. Thanks.